the absolute banger of German fruitcake yeasty bread stuff. Hi guys, welcome back to my apartment. Welcome back to my channel for another video. I promised at least one more video by the end of this year, particularly holiday themed, and god damn it, I will deliver on that. Today we are talking about an absolute classic for Christmas time and for the holiday season. It's kind of an involved one, so I'm going to try and keep this intro as short as possible. That's right, today we are talking about the German classic, the boozy, nutty Christmas time staple that is German Marzipan Stollen. I can hear it now. Amanda, I've had Stollen and I don't like it. And I'm here to tell you, you probably haven't had good Stollen. I myself did not like it for a very, very long time. It wasn't until the last like 2 years that I started to really appreciate it for what it was. And last year I decided to try to make it by myself, like figure out how to make it. And so that is the recipe that I'm bringing you guys today. It is my Marzipan Stollen. I feel like a lot of different countries and different cultures have a classic Christmas like fruit cake or fruit bread of some sort. Italy's got panettone. A lot of English speaking countries have just plain old fruit cake, and Germany has Stollen. So it is a sweet yeasted bread that is just chocked full of boozy dried fruit, usually candied peel, and nuts. And in this case, marzipan, because I love marzipan and I put marzipan in literally anything that I can because I think it belongs in literally everything. But do not let that intimidate you. I promise you it is so easy to make. If you've ever made any kind of bread before, you can make Stollen. If you've never made any kind of bread before, you can learn how to make Stollen because I'm here to teach it to you. Am I even in focus? I can't tell if I was in or out of focus that whole time, so if I was out of focus, I am very sorry, but we should be on the right track now. I like can't see anymore, so hopefully we're in focus now. Sorry. I promised I'd keep this intro short, so without further ado, let's get into the recipe. As always, the full recipe and method of prep can be found in my blog, which will be in the description down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. But let's get into the recipe. So this recipe actually starts the night before. So you're gonna wanna take your nuts. In this case, I had chopped blanched almonds. You can use blanched almond slivers, almond slices, almond pieces, whatever. You just want them to be chopped pretty roughly so that, you know, they're kind of little. And you're gonna wanna mix all of that in with some water. I used about 1/4 cup. As far as the dried fruit goes, so the rest of the inclusions, the recipe is intentionally a little vague. I did that on purpose to try to like promote some creativity with this recipe. But basically you can kind of put whatever dried fruit you want in here. I believe it's traditionally just raisins and currants and some candied fruit, some candied peel. First off, I did not have access to candied peel. I couldn't get it anywhere. I didn't have time to make it. But also my family likes different kinds of dried fruits. So for me in my loaves, I did about 1 cup of raisins and 1/2 cup each of dried apricots and dried cherries, both of which I chopped up roughly to be the size of the raisins. But you can use whatever you want. If you want more dried apricots than raisins, you can do that. If you want to take the cherries out altogether, if you want to just use raisins, you can do whatever you want. As long as you have 2 cups or about 330 grams of dried fruit inclusions, you are good to go. So kind of tailor that to whatever you and or your family and friends like. So you're gonna wanna take those inclusions and mix them in with some rum. Rum is traditional. You can also use brandy if that's what you have, but you're gonna wanna mix that all together and leave both the nuts and the dried fruits to soak overnight. So the dried fruit will absorb all of the booze and all of the flavor that comes along with it, and the nuts will start to soften. So it'll be a lot easier to mix them into your bread when they're not poking holes in the gluten. So the morning of the bread making, you're gonna start with a little mini pre-ferment. This will give the yeast a little bit of a head start and a chance to kind of start developing those flavors before we mix it in with the rest of the bread. So you're going to want to mix your yeast and your milk and flour together in a small bowl, cover it and let it set aside in a warmer place for about 30 to 40 minutes. You'll know it's ready when it's puffed up a bit. It should have grown a little bit and the top will be all bubbly and active and whatnot. So that's how you will know that your pre-ferment is ready. Once your pre-ferment is ready to go, we can start mixing the main dough. So the main dough for the bread. So I recommend you get a hold of a stand mixer if you can. You can absolutely do this by hand if you want to, but I would recommend trying with a stand mixer if you can get one, because this has a lot of mixing. There is a lot of mixing, a lot of hard mixing for a while. So in the bowl of a stand mixer, you're gonna wanna scale the rest of your flour, your sugar, and all of your spices. So in this recipe, I used ginger, cinnamon, mace if you can get your hands on it. If not, you can just use nutmeg. I just use nutmeg, but mace is traditional. Cardamom, salt, and orange zest. If you don't like orange, you can also use lemon zest, but I love orange, so that's what I used. So go ahead and throw that into the bowl along with the flour and the sugar, and go ahead and give that a light mix with just like a spatula or something. So this sounds counterproductive, but you're gonna want a paddle attachment to mix in the wet ingredients once we start adding those in. Basically, this just ensures that everything gets mixed together completely and really well, and then we'll switch to the dough hook. So for the next step, which is adding the butter and the milk, you're gonna wanna use a paddle attachment to combine that until there are no dry spots remaining. And then you're gonna wanna add your egg yolks. So this is 3 egg yolks and the vanilla. Go ahead and give that a good mix until everything is completely combined. And then you're gonna go ahead and add your pre-ferment, which again should at this point be active and bubbly and puffy and goopy and whatever. So you're just gonna mix that with the paddle on a lower speed for a few minutes, just until everything is combined and no dry spots remain. It's gonna look a little weird. It's gonna look kind of like goopy and like a weird texture, not like a bread dough at all. That's totally fine. We're just mixing it together so that all of the ingredients are combined. So at this point, we're gonna switch to a dough hook, and then we're going to mix it on a higher speed for quite a while. You're gonna mix it for about 10 minutes on a medium high speed with the dough hook, and you're gonna mix until it is done. So if it takes longer than 10 minutes, keep mixing. This is not a hard number. That's just how long it took me. So you'll know it's done once it passes the window pane test. So it's pretty similar to when we made brioche in my last video. So you're gonna pinch a piece of the dough off and kind of stretch it out. And if you can stretch it out to be really thin without the dough breaking immediately, that's how you know that your gluten is strong enough and completely formed and your dough is ready to go. So if it's been 10 minutes, you pull your dough out and it's just breaking in your hands and you can't pull it thin at all, go ahead and keep on mixing for just a few more minutes. It'll come together in the end, I promise. It could end up being closer to 20 minutes. That's just how long it took me. So at this point, you're really looking for more of the correct indicators than just like a time on a recipe. So once your dough is finished, it's past the window pane test and it's all mixed and ready to go. Go ahead and pop it into a greased bowl and cover it with either like loose plastic wrap or a tea towel and let it sit in a warm-ish place for an hour or 2-ish. For me, it took about an hour and a half, but it could take anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. Basically, you're just looking for it to have puffed up. It should have grown significantly at this point. So this is just kind of like the bulk proof. So next, once it is proofed and ready to go, we're gonna start adding our inclusions. So all of our dried fruit and our nuts. You can do this in the mixer if you want. Like you can pop the dough back into the mixer and pour the inclusions in and just gotta give it a good mix. You can do whatever you want. For me, I just flattened the dough out into kind of like a big rectangle and just popped the dried fruit and the nuts onto there and gave it a good quick knead. If there's still rum or water at the bottom of the containers that you had the fruit and the nuts in, do not add that in. You don't want any like extra moisture in there. Hopefully the liquid was mostly absorbed by all of the fruit and the nuts, so there shouldn't be too much extra, but if there is any, don't put it in there. The nice thing about popping it back into the mixer as opposed to kneading it by hand is that if you do get a little bit too much extra moisture in there, you can just pop some flour onto it to kind of absorb it. I just popped flour on top of the dough while I was hand kneading it, but you might need to add some flour if there is too much liquid added back into the dough. So just kind of keep an eye on it. If it's getting to be too hard to work with, don't be afraid to add some flour to absorb all of that. So this recipe makes 2 normal sized loaves of Stollen. If you just want one, you can go ahead and cut it in half, but this recipe makes 2. So at this point, once all the inclusions are added in, go ahead and chop it in half. The shaping process for a typical Stollen is a little weird. It's gonna be easier for you to watch it than it is for me to explain it, but I will do my best. This is the point where it goes from regular Christmas Stollen to Marzipan Stollen. If you want to omit the Marzipan, you can. I don't think you should. Marzipan is like an almond paste, almond dough kind of a thing. It's in a lot of European, like German and Austrian recipes. It's one of my absolute favorite things. I love it. I put it in anything that I can. You can find it at a lot of like specialty chocolate or candy stores. Some grocery stores in my area actually carry it. It'll say marzipan or almond paste on there, or you can go ahead and make some. I will leave a recipe for marzipan and a link to some marzipan on Amazon if you really don't know where to start and you want to try some. I will leave both in the description box down below so that you have like somewhere to start. You can do this entire shaping process without the marzipan log in there. It would just, you just wouldn't add it. So flatten out your little like log of marzipan into kind of like a long football-ish shape. It should be kind of tapered on the ends. Take your rolling pin and press it in the center to kind of make a little channel or a little divot in the center. This is where your marzipan log is gonna go. So go ahead and take your marzipan. It should be about 250 grams of marzipan split in half, so 125 grams if you're just doing one loaf. You're gonna wanna roll that into kind of like a long cylinder that is roughly the length of your like football of dough. And then go ahead and set that into the little channel, the little divot that you have in the middle. And then fold one side of the Stollen dough onto the other, really enveloping that marzipan. Again, if you're not putting it in there, you don't have to put the divot in. You're just gonna wanna get that football shape. And then you're gonna take the side of your hand, so like where your pinky is, like right here, and press against the marzipan to create kind of like a seal. Again, without the marzipan, you're still gonna do this. It's still gonna give you that classic Stollen shape. So you're gonna wanna press into it to create a seal, to create kind of a dent, and then just kind of, you know, neatly squish everything together so it's all attached and whatever. At this point, if you've got a ton of fruit and nuts kind of poking through the dough and are just like sitting on top, you can pick them out, like pick the raisins and stuff out, because if they're just sitting on top, they'll probably burn in the oven. So you can go ahead and just pull them out. So proofing the Stollen should hopefully not take as long as it did the first time around when we were doing the bulk proof. But it should still take around 30 to 40 minutes in a warm place. You know, just keep it covered with like light plastic wrap or a tea towel or something like that. You'll know that it's ready when you poke it and the divot that your finger leaves behind slowly rises back up. If you poke it and the divot just kind of like sinks or stays, then it's not ready. Just give it another 5 to 10 minutes or so. But once you feel like you're reaching the tail end of the proof, go ahead and preheat your oven to about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can go ahead and throw your bread in the oven. It bakes for about 30 to 45 minutes. The best way to check that it's done is to actually poke a thermometer in. That's the best way to check with most breads, to make sure that the very center of the bread is about 190 degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously, if you put marzipan in there, try not to take the temperature of the marzipan. You're looking for the temperature of the center center of your loaf of bread. If you don't have a thermometer, that's totally fine. You're mostly just gonna be looking for color. If you've got like a nice deep golden color to it, and your house will smell phenomenal. So once it has come out of the oven, we are about to do potentially the most important parts of making a Stollen bread. These next few steps are integral in creating the moist, flavorful, delicious loaves that we know and love. So go ahead and pull them out of the oven, set them aside for like 5 minutes just so that you can kind of get ready and get your bearings together. And then you're just gonna poke holes all over it. Use like a skewer or like the tip of your thermometer, toothpick, fork. You're gonna poke a bunch of holes all over the bread, just kind of evenly spaced so that they're all over the place, but like just kind of go ham. And then you are going to brush the bread down in melted unsalted butter. You heard me correctly, we're basting this bitch in butter. Poking the holes and then brushing the butter on top helps to create that really nice, moist inside. Once the butter is completely soaked in and absorbed and stuff like that, you are going to rub the bread down in granulated sugar, just regular old plain sugar, and then wrap it up and let it sit overnight. It will fully absorb the butter, and the granulated sugar will kind of do its own thing to help to like preserve the outside of it. So the next day we're gonna pull our Stollen out. It is all cooled and ready to go and everything. You can just go ahead and kind of go ham, covering it in powdered sugar. I just used a sifter and just kind of, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what this is. Imagine the sifter in my hand here and then just me hitting it against this hand. That's what this is. And that gives it the classic, you know, the classic snowy look that loaves of Stollen often have. The coating of butter and sugar helps with the flavor, obviously. It gives it some more sweetness, but it also helps to preserve the loaf. There's enough alcohol in that fruit to keep this bread good for a very, very long time. But the sugar also helps to, I said it earlier, but kind of create a casing around the bread, because Stollen is actually best eaten like a week after you've made it, maybe even 2 weeks after you've made it. Letting it sit wrapped up really nicely for a week or two really helps the flavors in the inside with the booze and the fruit and the nuts to really like develop and kind of mature. Obviously the Stollen is going to be very, very good if you cut into it as soon as you finish covering it in powdered sugar. But if you have the time or the patience to wrap it up, leave it in a cool spot for about a week or two if you can, that's what it's going to be at its absolute best. Even if you just leave it for a few days, those flavors will really mature, and I think it'll definitely be worth it. I personally made mine at the beginning of this month because I had some people that I was sending loaves of Stollen to. So I made mine at the beginning of the month, let them sit for 2 weeks or so before I even started eating mine, and then obviously I sent them off so then by the time that the person received them they could also either wait or, you know, dive in. If you let it sit for about a week or so, you'll probably have to put more powdered sugar on top, because the powdered sugar, like the sugar does start to absorb into the bread. So just for kind of like aesthetics and visuals, you're probably gonna have to put more powdered sugar on top. I do think it's worth it to wait. After all of that time and energy that you put in, that labor of love that you've put in to this bread, you are left with something truly beautiful. Stollen is really good in the mornings with like a cup of coffee or tea. You know, dig in on Christmas Day. It's a special little treat. I would heat this up in the microwave for like 30 seconds and just enjoy it warm if you can. It's very, very good that way. I know everybody has their own traditions around the holiday season, their own things that they like to make with their families. This is one of mine that I wanted to share with you guys. Just all of the flavors in here, the cinnamon and the orange and the almonds just screams Christmas for me. And I really, really hope that none of this was too intimidating and you guys have the time to try it out. I know Christmas is like a week away. But yeah, so that's how you make Stollen. So I hope wherever you are, you're having a happy and safe holiday season, whatever it is that you celebrate at this time of year, if at all. I will see you guys next year with hopefully more videos. I make no promises. And that's it. Bye. I will wait for you to stop making noise.